just now, I'm going to say welcome to the Node.js package maintenance team meeting for November 17th, 2020. We'll follow the agenda as outlined in the issue in the repo, which is issue number 430. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? No? Okay. Let us move on then here. I'm going to paste in the chat the issue if people can add themselves to the minutes. So the first issue that was tagged was overview of current initiatives, housekeeping, and other questions, number 428. If I remember correctly, was that Christopher, you added that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, take it away.
Okay, let me just pulling it up here. Okay, so yeah, I posted this. Basically, if you missed the issue, I was kind of poking around and trying to figure out, well, what should I work on here, because I want to get more involved here. And so I found some things, and they didn't look like they were up to date, essentially. So there's this roadmap GitHub project. And there's some stuff, it's one of those Kanban GitHub boards. And there's some stuff in there, and it says in progress. I don't know how in progress things are.
I don't think we've used that particularly a lot.
Right. So maybe this project, if it's not in use, maybe we should just get rid of it or something. But anyway, so in this issue, I listed the ones that were marked as in progress, and perhaps that doesn't really matter if we're not really using this thing. But the other one was, I was looking through the issues, and a bunch of these were marked good first issue. And the vast majority of these seem to be requests for draft guidance documents. And there was, a handful of them. I'm not sure, what is going on with those, if they're still needed, if those really are like a good first issue at all, because it would seem to me like those like a guidance document is something like that we want to really collaborate on as a team, instead of, I don't know, but maybe somebody can just come along and send a draft, but I feel like that's probably unlikely. So yeah, there was that, and I guess a few more questions in this issue, but I don't know. I guess we can start with the good first issue thing if we've determined we're not really using that GitHub project. So the good first issue stuff. So maybe these guidance documents. Where are we at with them?
So I was just about to start off the integration testing one, because I made a promise to link it back to the unit testing one. Yeah, I remember. And so we could actually work on that. I've been very busy up to now with the other, the work side of things. But I should be getting some time coming up now, and I'll be happy to work with you, Christopher.
Okay, so there's, let's see, it looks like you're assigned to that one, and then this other one is this testing guidelines.
Yeah, right? So yeah, the testing, and they will obviously refer to each other, and I made some commitments that I would refer back to some certain points in some of the meetings, and I'd be happy to work on that with you. As you said, it's a collaborative one, and if you're the Christopher I think you are, you should be good at testing.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I'm happy to help out with that one.
And that's a good way to get started. You can also look like we have that doc directory. So if you go into package maintenance, there's a doc directory, a docs, and in there's like drafts and basically drafts and the ones that are just in the docs directory, which are promoted. So I think we might have opened some of those to promote the current drafts in addition to writing them from scratch. So it'd kind of be like, for each one of those, it's like, is there one that's already in a draft? If yes, review it, help get it promoted to non-draft. If there isn't one, write an initial copy. You're right that, we want to discuss those as a team and get consensus, but it does take somebody to write it up. And
Sure.
I think you're as well positioned to write some of those up in the first case as anybody else.
So this testing guidelines one looks like it's not actually in draft. Does that mean this issue should be closed, or?
I suspect that one maybe, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Owen.
So there's the ones marked as draft. Sorry, it may be a bit misleading. It's not the call to action isn't to draft a first version of them. The call to action is what Michael relayed, which is they're in draft. A lot of them are pretty complete, and so what we're hoping is, could someone just come pick it up, pull it out of draft, give that review, open a PR, so then that could pull the rest of us in. Basically, it's a draft out of draft promotion process is really what it's trying to track. So getting content that's there and just getting it more visible to like people that visit the repo and stuff.
But I think the testing one in particular, there was a PR opened and it was promoted. So that one actually we should just close out.
Yeah, and then there are a couple call to actions for just brand new documentation. I think we did an audit and found a couple topics that don't exist that we would like as top level. So those aren't the draft promotion. So it depends, but we're hoping that just moving a file and adding it to table of contents and giving it a once over would be maybe some potentially enticing work, but it's docs too. So
You want to promote Tierney?
Yep. Right. So actually, yeah. So those ones, a number of those, it would actually be good to.
Mhm.
It's been a while, and if they're basically done, we should get them promoted. So that would be a good thing for you to do, Chris, to just actually create the PRs to move them to non-draft after having reviewed them and
Mhm.
added your thoughts as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure they could benefit from most of them have been there for a little while that I know of. So maybe things have changed in the node.js timeline or JavaScript timeline, and so a proofread wouldn't hurt as that happens.
So when we use the word promote, we mean like to make these like official or something? What does that mean?
It's move it out of the draft directory.
If you look at my comments on 428, it kind of captures that. So it's basically three steps. Proofread, actually do like a move from the draft folder to the docs folder, and then there's a table of contents of a README file in the docs folder, and so we would just want to mark that file as no longer being a draft anymore.
Okay.
So that needs to happen to each one of those pieces of content. So there's an issue to do that for each piece of content in the draft folder.
All right, and so this kind of ties into another question I had then in that 428, which was like, okay, so we have these documents, they're in this docs folder. No one's going to find them there, right? So how do we get these in front of maintainers? Is that a discussion we've had?
So a little bit. If you go to the README, the second section is called for maintainers, and it links to them there. So that's one spot. And then hopefully, we're hoping that as more tools and stuff come out of this community, they could also go under that maintainers section. So that's the first one. And then the table of contents was added because we didn't have like a single listing of all of them. So at least now for times that we've seen people looking for help, we at least have a single way to link to all of them. So yeah, there's a couple ways there, but certainly evangelism of them.
Yeah,
Something we have.
I think we're at the point, you know, we built them up over time. They were in draft. There's enough now, and especially if we get those other ones promoted, that it's like
Yeah.
we need to come up with our strategy for making them visible, you know, and promoting them every, like, I don't, you know,
sharing them in Slacks or stuff like that, you know.
Well, you know, like even like a monthly message from the package maintenance team, or I don't know, whatever we think is going to be effective in getting them out there, right?
Well, I think it goes to another point that Christopher brought up. Well, in terms of like looking at the roadmap and seeing it still, we actually do have a couple initiatives going on. I'm wondering if it's worth trying to capture some of those initiatives as themes, as maybe milestones. So I know that Wes and Dominicus are working on pkjs.org, and we've got Glenn and myself and a couple folks working on doc. So maybe we turn a couple of those themes into milestones and actually just make like a Kanban board, and then, you know, try and use that. I don't know if we have other themes to add, but maybe that could be something for us to think about for 2021. You know, do we have any other kind of special projects? Maybe one of those is a project evangelism. You know, maybe is there a way that a couple folks, so basically we could, you know, break off in a couple of groups, focus on 2 or 3 things at a time, use the milestones to track that, and the project board to just kind of, you know, show the work in progress on the assembly line, so to speak. So, and then, you know, certainly probably use more themes, but yeah, I was just thinking about that, and, you know, thinking about his question. It, you know, there's it's a little hard to grok kind of what, you don't even see anything about pkjs.org, and that's kind of been a big thing for the past few months. So
yeah, so yeah, maybe instead of just obliterating the project, we could actually update it and get it up to date and make it, you know, actually reflect reality. Okay, well, cool. And then so my other questions were just kind of about the PKGS org, and like, you know, is there some sort of overview of the work going on in there? I don't know. It's hard for me to jump into this repo and then be like, okay, there's all this other stuff in this package.js org, and I have no idea what any of it has to do with any particular issue here, or like who's working on what, or what needs help. So, I mean, yeah.
Agreed. I think the milestones would be good, because you can put notes in the milestones. So you could say, you know, PKJS milestone is, you know, 2-3 bullet, trying to do these 2 or 3 things being worked on by X and such, right? So that's something I wouldn't mind doing, is maybe just trying to group some of our ongoing themes and maybe put little descriptions and, you know, who you could reach out to if you're interested in working on said thing, and then try and put the issues that we're working on into the current roadmap board, and maybe move the things that haven't had any activity in a while just off the board. And then that way, if you went to the board, you'd see like, oh, Wes and Dominicus are doing. Speaking of which, he's got his hand raised.
Yeah, so from one perspective, yeah, you're right. Maybe we need an overview of that. But on the other hand, I am rarely convinced that we need more process in general, as a general rule. And I think the PKGJS, it has like, what, 13 repositories, and they kind of have descriptions there. The descriptions may not always be great, but it's not like we have a set process, and I think that's a good thing. Yeah, and and I think you'll probably find that in some of the issues, some of the tools are mentioned there, right? So you've drawn the line between Webby and the original issue discussing SIGIM and that kind of stuff. I think you'll find there's a couple of smaller tools that Wes has built or has been involved in and kicked off. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, I agree. Like, I'm not asking for a bunch of bureaucracy, but on the other hand, it makes it a little difficult to, if you're me, like, to kind of jump in and say, okay, well, what's going on and what can I help with? Because there is not this overview. There's not a high level view of that work. So that's, in my mind, that's the drawback. But yeah, I totally understand not wanting to add process to anything, because that, yeah. So I don't know, you know, and it's also probably going to be a little more awkward to have all the work happening in one org and then the project which tracks that work in a different org. Just because of like the boundaries between, you know, on GitHub, where it's I don't imagine you can take an issue from org A and put it into a card in a project in org B. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, that might prove a challenge. I'm not suggesting that, you know, hey, the package.js needs its own project board, because I think that will become obvious if it is an issue. But just from my point of view, just as somebody who's coming on and wants to get more involved, it's kind of hard to see what's happening.
Fair point. Maybe, yeah, just getting an overview, or just generating that overview from the list that's already there on GitHub. Just scanning through the projects.
It is a question if it's going to get stale, like, because the other approach is people get, you know, people join the meeting, and like at this point we should be able to give Chris an idea of what each of us is kind of working on and pushing forward, and you know, then that's the pointers to the different repos and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, Owen, if you're volunteering, I'm not going to say no, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily that's what I'm asking for. That's like one way to solve the problem. Like what I really want to know is who needs help, right? And so that doesn't mean necessarily a project board, right? Here I am asking who needs help. So
I mean, I'll take help.
I need help.
Like,
yeah,
if you want to raise
right.
your hand for work, I'll take work.
Okay, so what do y'all need help with? Like, where can I be most effective? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I mean, I'm currently working to try to get Meet into a state where it's more broadly usable. So 2 parts of that. One is ripping out the current release tooling that is built in, because it kind of hinders development. It's good for automation, but it's not good for development. So going through and ripping that out, and either replacing it or creating a new system. There's a different GitHub action that we could use that does relatively the same, but doesn't hinder the development the same way. The other thing is just like adding a few features, like the way Wes built it was largely like write your own JavaScript to automate the things. And the big thing I'd like to do there is make it so you don't have to know JavaScript to get the benefit of having those things. So like being able to just like put in a template, some kind of template kind of structure for give me time, like a default time zone block of all the major cities that would be relevant to this meeting, which the code's already written. Like it's literally written in the code base, and just basically going through and replacing that in the meeting template that gets passed through. That kind of thing is the other thing there that I'd like to see us ship in that. Because that really lowers the barrier for, like, you know, the OpenJS Foundation to use it without having to ask people to write JavaScript, which enables more people to be able to manage it effectively.
Yeah. Well, can you just like ping me in an issue or two?
Sure thing.
I don't know. Maybe you can even assign it to me. I'm not sure if I'm like in package.js. I don't think I am, but if I was, then you could assign it to me. So.
And I guess unfortunately, this is probably our later meeting for Beth, but she's been helping to push forward the work in Webby, which is one of the things we're doing to help module owners and maintainers basically check that when they do updates, they're not breaking dependencies. And I know she has a list of a few things that would be good to help out on that front. So if you reach out to her.
I reached out to her, at least in an issue, but I didn't hear back, so I figured she's busy with something. I would like to sync up with her and see like what.
Hello.
Oh,
Oh wait,
sorry, you are there. I didn't
I
see.
think you missed it the first time, maybe.
Yeah.
Which
all
issue?
right. So Wibby, basically, I know that we being IBM at one point had, you and maybe somebody else, Andrew or something, working on this. And I was just kind of wondering like, where, I wanted more information about, what the intended use cases were, because like I don't have the issue handy, but I was talking with I'm sorry, is it, I'm on my phone, so I can't even see people's names. Dominicus, is that how you pronounce it?
Yep.
Okay, I was talking with him about okay, so Wibby does X, Sitgim does Y, and the original issue that I saw anyway was from Mateo, and he said we want something like Sitgim, but we want it to be generalized so other userland packages can use it. But Wibby is doing something, at least in my mind, considerably different than what Sitgim does, and it's obviously it's a means to an end. There's two different ways of going about solving the same thing, but I'm wondering like, why is it one way and not the other way? There's some rationale for that, but I was wondering if, Beth, you or somebody who has spent time, designing this thing could like explain more about why it should do what it does instead of what Sitcom does. Does that make sense?
I can give you a very simple answer to that. It's the current stuff that Wibby does is because I wrote up a proposal to do it that way, and I wrote up the proposal to do it that way because I wanted to work that way, right? There's nothing preventing functionality inside that does it the way that you described, right? Which is a fair enough way to do it, and yeah. It's essentially just that, and it does it that way because I want to work on it on a thing that does things that way because I have applications for that.
Right.
I mean, I can talk in general terms about the trade-offs if that would help.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
the way Sitchin
think,
does it just doesn't scale, right? Like it requires a centralized, very expensive CI. It requires being able to support the disparate CI setups that all of the projects it's checking have, and like the intention is to be able to create a way that sort of self-serve any maintainer can say, am I about to break the things that depend on me or not? And the reality is that like Sitchin includes a small slice of the ecosystem. Most things aren't worthy of inclusion in it, right? But many more things than that ideally would want to verify that they're not breaking their dependencies. So I'm not like, it's still probably a useful thing in general, but like I, as a package maintainer, I have a couple packages in Sitchin, but the vast majority of mine are not. It wouldn't really make sense to put them there, but they're transitive dependencies of so many things that I would love a way to just say, am I about to break half the internet or not? Right? And Sitchin doesn't tell me that. Sitchin just tells me if like a new node is going to break me.
Yeah, and a lot of it was around the model of, it wasn't, I wouldn't cast it as just, oh, hey, one way and you could do it otherwise. I think we discussed it and we thought it presented a better model in terms of that scalability, and that some modules tests you can't just clone and run, right? They require some sort of other setup or infrastructure. And so by being able to leverage the CI environments of the modules themselves, you're going to end up with something that's more functional and scalable. The work there so far is like to do that in an incremental way, so that yes, you may be running it locally in our own forks to start with, but the end goal is really to hopefully leverage the existing CIs whenever possible, so that, you know, if you've got an important module, hopefully your 10 most significant dependents are going to say, sure, I want you to run, you know, tests in my CI when you're going to do a major release, because it's important to me. And so it's around the model of being able to scale that way and not having that central dependency where you have to have a big CI that can run everybody's tests, but basically, you know, cooperatively work among package maintainers to be able to run the tests that matter.
Okay, you know, I think that was the point I was missing in so far as like the you know, Sitcom, it seems to work pretty well. Like, you know, Node is not breaking a bunch of stuff all the time. And so like that suggests to me that, you know, despite its drawbacks, you know, it's been good.
It's definitely been good, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was like, well, then if it works for Node, so why, you know, why is that not just good enough for everybody else? And so that was
because Node's the platform. Node's an implicit dependency of every package. And so just swapping out the node underneath it, like magically tests it on the new node.
Yeah.
But packages and their dependencies are explicit, and it's a little trickier to, I think, take a dependency graph and just kind of programmatically swap out things from inside it. And
also, Node as the platform, we have a robust CI with, you know, we have a CI that can support something like Sigim, whereas I don't know that every maintainer, or a lot of maintainers, won't necessarily have that same CI. They're relying on some other CI, and pulling in and running the tests of everybody else could actually become more than like the free limits will support and that kind of stuff.
And
I mean,
yeah, right.
You could end up with that situation here, depending on how you fork and set things up. But I think the key point is that in some of these, you cannot simply run them. There is the convention that, you know, npm install, npm test, and you're done. In reality, it doesn't always quite work out that way.
Right, like what we've got so far is like, well, at some point, you know, if it's established, you might go and say to your dependencies, hey, can I run the tests in your CI? And they'll say yes. To start with, we want to be able to run it all locally so we can make progress without having to run tests in other people's CIs, which I think can lead to what Dominicus said, is the first model where you are running it, you may still end up with some of the challenges in terms of CPU usage and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the other thing is with Node, you're explicitly only testing one Node version. But packages, like I have packages that test 200 Node versions at once. And like, so that matrix is not run with npm test. That is contained in a CI specific file, right? And so like, would we want to write a tool that could support Travis YAML, GitHub Actions, Circle CI, BuildKite, Azure, like whatever else people have in mind? Like, whereas if we just utilize whatever system they already have set up, then we kind of get all that for free, and we don't have to care what their matrix is like as long as their matrix runs.
Right. Okay, well, I mean, I think that basically answered my question about like, why is it different? So thank you.
But I think catching up with Bethany for some, you know, I think
actually Dominicus has labeled a project in Wibby of like MVP, like the last few issues to get like the first MVP out the way. They're all labeled up.
Yeah. Yeah, we had the doc that Bethany prepared originally in terms of Opal 1 there. I added some checkboxes there to track the progress there. I hear what Christopher is asking for in a tool, and he does make a point. And if we could build that into Wibi as well as all the other things, right? We now have a configuration file format. It's very crude right now, but the idea is that even though we discussed that you may be opening pull requests, in some cases you may need to open pull requests, in some cases you may need to fork, in some cases you may be allowed to just push a branch directly. So you will have some configuration, and maybe in some cases it's just enough for you to do the white smoke test, if you will, to just check whether one version of Node passes very quickly without doing all the other things in a SIGIM style. So, I mean, yeah, it's just a matter of getting hands to build that. So there's that.
All right. Well, so it is like 37 minutes after the hour.
Yep.
So I'm sure there's other stuff on the agenda. So thank you.
So, okay, thanks. Right, so the next one was number 418, maintainer needed query string. I think, Owen, was it you who'd put that on?
Owen. So I contacted them and they seem okay now. There's quite a lot of interaction. Some people popped up and said, no, we're good.
On that particular issue, I did catch up. I followed back to the issue in query string. I think Tierney had originally connected us, but it looks like the team is now, and they had at a point in time raised a maintainer needed flag, but I think they've now found their maintainer and they're good to go, at least from what I was able to gather in their thread. So on our end,
We should close that one out.
I think we can, yeah.
Okay. You want to go ahead and do that, or?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything, but I think my interpretation was off, but yeah, sounds like we're in a good spot to do that.
Sounds good. Okay, auto updating GitHub action matrix for Node. This one.
Yeah, that's me.
Yep.
This is actually something I need help on, very much so, because I am trying to solve a similar problem for the purposes of Wibi as well. Because for Wibi to actually be useful and with the goal of trying to keep it simple for maintainers, it needs to be able to maintain a set of GitHub actions. It could be built as a GitHub application, but I very much dislike that model personally, and it's, yeah. So it needs to be able to maintain a set of GitHub actions. So as a user of Wibi, you would need to install a couple of actions in your repository. And that means that, copy pasting these actions is a no-go, right? The copy pasting workflows across many repos, that's just wasteful. But GitHub does not provide any better primitives than actions which are at step level rather than the whole workflow level. So for purposes of Wibi, there is a need to have something which allows you to sync these things. Or my current thinking is that, for example, when you npm install, Wibi will have maybe a post-install script or maybe an explicit script that maintains these actions. You would do something like Wibi update actions, and then it would go and update all your workflows with the latest version that it expects. Rather, not that it expects, but just the latest version that is useful for maintainers, right? And this gets back to the issue of auto-updating node versions in GitHub Actions. With the recent news from Travis, config Travis is kind of becoming useless, but there's a need for something CI config GitHub Actions, which allows you to automatically drag in new node versions into your test matrix. And yeah, the code, am I sharing? I'm not sharing my, so I can quickly share my screen, right? So we can look at the working example, the smallest one that I could come up with, right? And this is, you would have a prepare node matrix, which takes in the CI config GitHub Actions, which we maintain, which generates a matrix based on your policy. So it will take all the LTS versions, which are greater than 10, and then you use that in a variable. But this is very, very verbose. right? You don't want people to be copy pasting that. That's just nonsense. Yeah. Go
Can
ahead,
I?
Jordan?
So just because of Travis's recent changes, I've been looking into migrating my hundreds of repos over to GitHub Actions, and this exact approach is what I ended up settling on. It's annoying, and I have to copy paste a bunch of boilerplate, but it's like in theory, it means I don't have to make any changes to the inline CI config in the future. I just change the matrix. But there's a lot of my approach is still evolving, so I'm not suggesting any specific implementation here. But there's a lot of weirdnesses. Essentially, GitHub Actions has the potential to be amazing, but it's still missing a lot of features that CI systems have, especially around sharing configs. So I empathize with this pain. I've felt it too.
Yeah, and then everybody's moving to GitHub Actions now. And so far, I've been following some issues, some of the bigger repos organizations that are doing that. So far, I haven't heard people grumbling about how much copy pasting they need to do. But surely somebody has solved this by now, no?
Can we not publish a package to NPM that has a .github folder with workflows in it?
And then copy that on post install. Yes, that's
what would be amazing
basically
is if we had a GitHub package that could essentially do that, look at a template and stamp that onto the current repo, and then error if there's any diffs, or sort of a way to, and reusable beyond just package.js, but I would use this in my repos, right? I would just run this in CI so that my CI failed whenever I needed to update my GitHub Actions. And GitHub does have a workflow templates per org or per user, but there's no functionality currently to stamp those onto individual repos. And so even just enabling that would be really useful for the ecosystem.
Yeah, the templates, they're only on repo creation. So, but yeah, syncing that from one to the other is something that
you can also go to
then,
the Actions tab and make a new action, and you can use a workflow there. So it is useful after repo creation, but there's no way to keep them in sync.
How old is GitHub Actions by now? 2 years, right? Isn't it? 1 year?
I think it went out of beta or closer to a year ago.
Yeah,
like that.
GitHub,
it's like a year.
GitHub Universe last October of 2019 was, I think, when it fully came out of beta. No, Tierney, we cannot hear you.
I'm surprised. Is that not on their roadmap? Surely they've considered.
It's such a big roadmap. I've never been able to quickly find what I'm looking for, so I don't even look anymore.
I was going to say, I wonder if they have an issue tracker that we could either open an issue in or, contribute to or something.
Can you hear me now?
An open source issue tracker, right? I feel like I've seen that some Reddit thread before.
Yeah, we have a public roadmap.
Right, but do you have a way where basically like an RFCs repo for things that aren't on the roadmap for people to request them?
There's community forums and GitHub support for feedback, but I don't see any way to put certain things. We could go poke the actions team, and I could try to figure out and find a status update for you on shared config. But yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, and maybe Tierney knows. I can't speak. No clue why. Oh, I'm sorry, Tierney. Need to get your AV set up. Go on.
I mean, I think it's promising in the sense that both you and Jordan seem to arrive at similar solutions. So, I mean, you seems to be trending in the right direction with whatever limitations you have at the moment. And, I'd say there's probably good reason to think that GitHub Actions can only get, better going forward, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, or a year is, I guess, to be determined.
Needs to happen much sooner. Jordan, do you plan to build anything like that?
Tomorrow, today, now.
Sorry. So I eventually will want to, because I have a lot of repos, and it's a huge pain in the butt. Right now I'm doing it manually just because I need my CI to work. But
can you hear me?
Yeah, essentially what I would like
sorry.
to build is, oh, hey, Tony. But yeah, essentially what I'd like to build is a tool that does that, that just kind of, I run it locally and it just like does the right thing where it like makes a PR or something on each repo whose .github folder doesn't match the is missing stuff from the template or something like that. It's a little tricky though, because some repos have their own disparate config. Like in 2 of my repos, I run tests against like SES, a secure ECMAScript thing, but I don't want to do that everywhere else. But like, and also the node version ranges that each thing supports are a little different. And so I'd have to come up with a better story. But what would be even better is if GitHub Actions just natively supported the ability to share more than just individual steps, but to share workflows, because then it would be really easy. I would just have a single file that says, run these shared workflows with these configs, and then also whatever else is in the .github folder. And then I only have one single file that I have to keep in sync across repos. That would be really nice. Even better if that file could live in the .github folder.
Looks like Darcy linked a public roadmap feature for that that'll be shipping in Q2 2021.
Sweet. That's just 6 months of manual work.
Darcy, is that Microsoft Q2 or is that GitHub Q2 or like real world Q2? Because I don't know. Oh,
so
April, January.
It says April, January. So
okay,
there,
June,
2021 or April, June.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Cool.
I'm
great.
glad that they're using real quarters there. So I mean, the thing I think we could do there though is at the very least, if we want like building a module that kind of does that work of outputting it, that would still be useful once that ships. You just run it on one repo rather than 5 billion.
Right.
And so that might be worth doing still.
Yeah. I mean, I can also imagine so I've noticed that Renovate will update. Like when I have some actions that have the checkout action at V1, and Renovate has started updating those to V2. So there's some things Renovate can do. It seems like they're just exploring possibilities there. But I'm wondering, like having a service like that, essentially, that just kind of makes the PRs for me would also probably be nicer than me having to run something locally or put, anytime I have to put stuff in actions on a cron, it feels like a failure. But yeah, I think, in other words, I think GitHub Actions has the potential to be leagues better than every existing CI system. But right now they're only at like 70% of any of them. So I'm hoping that, they'll staff that up and keep improving. Right. Okay. Should we open a new issue and post some use cases there? Because I know that I will have this problem. I don't know when, but because GitHub Enterprise lags behind GitHub Public by 6 to 12 months, I will need this solved at some point. So if there's use cases to consider, then maybe I can see. Another thing to keep an eye on is GitHub is weirdly inconsistent with treating users as first-class citizens next to organizations. Some things work just as well with both, and some things they just seem to forget that user-owned repos exist. So it'd be really nice to sort of help keep an eye on that and make sure we can remind them that orgs aren't the only thing. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the next step on this one?
I'll add an issue and start collecting some use cases, and then I'll ping some people. I'll ping Matteo because I'm sure he'll run into this pretty soon. And I'll maybe ping somebody else in Nearform and see if there's anybody who's actually started building anything like that. I'm sure that somebody has to have built something for that by now. It's just that it's really hard to find. And something else I did, Dominique, because I don't know if your matrix action code does this, but mine actually, I made it fetch the JSON file from node.js.org, so the versions are always up to date. So the instant a new node version is released, it's automatically included in the appropriate. Oh, mine probably didn't go that far. I don't remember. I just built a proof of concept, so I probably had it hard coded or something. Yeah, I had just built the automation for my shared Travis config for that exact same thing, and then this happens. So.
One other thing that I have thought a lot about is like, do we want to maintain some like kind of like recommended CI like layout for Node, or from Node rather, not for Node, but from Node. So like, here's what we recommend you use, and people can like, we can give them a boilerplate template that will set them up for that, including auto updating or whatever. Is that something we'd like to consider down the road? I also think doing that for other providers is also equally valuable. Glenn, you seem to have thoughts.
Yeah, okay, so this is a good idea. However, I think we've steered away from picking winners and losers in the past.
Okay.
And at the end, when we come off the call, I'll talk about that a bit more.
Okay, sounds good.
So are you suggesting, Glenn, we'd like to reserve a little bit of time at the end
Yes, I would.
for private session? Because we've only got 10 minutes left. So I'm thinking we've got the next step for this one. The next issue is suggest a list of modules to get support info into. I still have Node.NAP on the list. The Red Hat team is working to get the support info added to a number of NodeShift modules. But if other people could help get it into modules or add in, that's what that issue is for, if people can think about that. And then the suggest ignoring vulnerability by the package maintainer. I know Wes and Darcy were working on a proposal for that front, but I haven't been able to catch up with Wes lately. I don't know if, Darcy, you've talked to him lately?
Unfortunately not. The last month has been a little bit hectic. We've shipped about 12 releases of the NPM client.
Okay. So we're hoping to kick off an effort on that front, but I guess no update this week. And the publishing strategy for PKGS packages, I don't know if that's something we need to talk about this week, or we can reserve the time for the private session. Any strong feeling on us on skipping that one? Okay, if not, then I think I will stop the stream and we can use the last few minutes for the other topic.
Just a very quick.
Yep.
I have, I have two pull requests that I wanted, but I have two approvals on one of those. So that's 422 if I can get some more, please. And then the larger one, the dependency management one, I messed up. So now it's open from unknown repository because I deleted my fork and now I can't update it. But I do have another one which follows up the issues that Jordan had. Oh, I see you have an approval there. So I guess I need some more approvals there, and then we can quickly follow up with the one that I have in draft 425. So
And
yeah, just asking.
Tierney or Darcy, or Roy, I suppose, any chance that we could sneak in somewhere into GitHub's roadmap a way to prevent people from unknowingly screwing up open PRs by deleting a fork? People do that on PRs they've made on my repos all the time. And it really sucks because there's no recovering it and I can never rebase that PR again. Alternatively, let me rebase that PR after it says unknown repository. That's even better. But
I can pass that feedback along. I don't think I can get it prioritized, but I can pass it along.
I'm more than happy to schedule conversation time to implore for it. I just don't know who to talk to. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everything is possible.
So Dominic,
okay.
Are we, wait, so are we,
I'm going to stop the live stream now and we'll move to a private session if that's okay.